Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I have a few reminders for folks while we're getting started. We'd like to keep our webinar conversational and welcome everybody's questions throughout. You can send the questions to the panel through the Q&A button loaded on your Zoom control panel. We will try to answer as many questions as we can live, but if we don't get your question, we'll be sure to follow up afterwards. You can follow today's conversation on Twitter, as we'll be live tweeting throughout the webinar at Rio_SEO and using hashtag RioWebinar. Finally, we will send a link to the webinar recording within the next 24 hours. So look out for a follow-up email from our marketing team. We'll just give everybody another minute or two before we get started. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Looks like everybody's flowed on in. My name is Marshall Nyman. Want to welcome everybody for joining us today. Looking forward to sharing some of our GMB, or now as we call it, Google Business Profile updates. Google continues to evolve and enhance its technology to better meet the needs of searchers and businesses alike. This year was no different, and we saw an abundance of new features, functionality, and updates that took place in 2021 and can continue to roll out even as this year quickly comes to a close. With all these updates, it was easy to miss some of the most impactful changes. My name is Marshall Nyman, and I'm an account director at Rio SEO, and I will be moderating today's discussion. Today, I'm joined by a great panel of Google My Business or Google Business Profiles product experts who will help me dive deeper into the noteworthy GBP updates for your business that you need to know. Our hope is to help you discover opportunities to further enhance your business listings and help you further prepare your 2022 marketing strategy. Joining me today is Colin Nielsen, VP of Local Search at Sterling Sky, Sherry Benelli, owner of Early Bird Digital Marketing, and Stefan Sombarak, founder of Marketing Metrology. So really excited to have this panel with us today. Love to everybody just quickly introduce yourself. We'll start with you, Colin.
Yeah, thanks, Marshall. So my name is Colin. I'm Vice President here at Sterling Sky. Been doing local search since 2010 with like a heavy focus on Google My Business, GBP, Google Places, pretty much that whole time. And also a Google My Business product experts with my fellow product experts here on the webinar. And yeah, just love everything to do with local search, and looking forward to talk about local search today.
Thanks, Colin. Sherry?
Yeah, I'll go next. I'm Sherry Benelli. I'm the owner of Early Bird Digital Marketing in lovely Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I have been a digital marketer since 1998, back in the early days. And I focus primarily on search engine optimization, local SEO primarily, content marketing, and obviously Google Business Profiles. So thank you.
And Stefan?
Having trouble with my mute. Yeah, hi, I'm Stefan Sombarak. I went to business school after going to engineering school in the 90s, and so I lean towards the technical side of things. I was coding websites in the 90s and was wondering how certain sites would climb to the top of their rankings, and that was pre-Google. That was back in the days of Lycos. And so that was sort of my introduction to SEO, and I just tinkered with it for maybe a decade or so. I had some SEO roles at work, sort of in the late 2000s, and really got a focus on local about 2015 or 2016. And I really enjoy the unique characteristics of local SEO. There's something different about it, and it really sings for me.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. We got a lot of experience on this panel, so Really excited to hear everybody's thoughts on some of these questions that we have today. So thanks again for being with us. Before we get started, I do want to let the audience know that there will be a poll available to learn what Google updates impacted you most this year. There are 6 answers to choose from, so please choose the one that is most applicable to your business. The first one would be A, Google My Business API updates, B, page experience update, C, star ratings appearing in the review snippet section of the knowledge panel, D, review removal request tool, E, updates to the Google Insights panel, F, new attributes made available to some primary categories, and then G for other. If you select other as an option, can you please share in the chat what the update is specifically? So we'll just kick off the discussion. And to start the discussion, we want to talk broadly about GMB updates or Google Business Profiles updates in 2021. I think it's going to take everybody a little bit of time to stop saying GMB. But Colin, we'll start with you. What do you believe was the most impactful Google Business Profile update this year? And what results, if any, have you seen?
Yeah, well, there was like so much that rolled out in 2021. It definitely makes it challenging to kind of boil it down to a few things. And we sort of track all of these changes month by month on our website at Sterling Sky. So leading up to this, I kind of reviewed every month going back to January, and like, boy, oh boy, there was just so much happening each month. So if I had to boil it down, I'd probably start off by something that wasn't a confirmed or official change, but something that was just kind of spotted recently. And that is the spotting of these 5-packs that people have been seeing. So I think Dave on our team here, I think, was the first person to spot this, and he tweeted about it. Dr. Pete, I saw him tweet, he was sharing them. So like enough people were seeing these 5-packs show up in the wild that it's probably fair to say it's still a test, but there's probably an okay chance that this is something that could roll out further. And I think any updates that have a direct impact on how the search results look, or how a business is going to look, or their chances of showing up in the first page, those are the ones that are super significant. So that would be my first pick, is these 5 picks. If they roll out, it's a game changer. Think of all the businesses that are struggling to get into the 3-pack. Position 4 or 5, suddenly you're on the first page for a core keyword. That's pretty significant. So I got lots, but that would definitely be sort of like the first one that I think, if it's not impactful now, it's going to.
Awesome. Interesting. Yeah, I think whenever you see things start to change in Google, you're always kind of curious what's going to happen next. So we'll keep our eyes out for that. Stefan, let me throw the next question over to you. Were there any GMB updates this year that you believe didn't get enough attention but are worth talking about more?
I'm like Colin in that I had to go back through a list of what's changed in 2021, because it seems like since March 2020 or April 2020, GMB has been changing weekly. So the updates have been fast and furious, and there have definitely been a couple of things that sort of got buried in all of the noise. And so one of the changes that was quite visible was the introduction of certain attributes like Latino-owned businesses. I think there was a lot of press behind that. So that's something that a lot of people are familiar with. But another characteristic of those attributes that's changed that was sort of subtle is the fact that the wording has been tweaked by Google. And so something like women-led businesses is now women-owned businesses. And I think that's really significant because it's not just an arbitrary decision. That's based on data that Google has collected. It reflects the way people are actually searching. And so enough people are making those searches where they include women-owned or Latino-owned in their search query that it prompted Google to change the label on the attribute. And I see that as being more than just a change in the labeling. It reflects the way people search, and it reflects what Google is building into business profiles that allow the businesses to identify how they fit into search queries. And so if you're, for example, a women-owned business, I'll give you a great example. I recently just typed in women-owned restaurants in Toronto, and you get a 3-pack. and they all have the little purple heart indicating that they're women-owned restaurants. I mean, it's something that's searchable. And so I think the relabeling of the attributes is more than just a name change. It indicates the way people search and how you can take advantage of those attributes with your business profile.
Thank you. Sherry, can I ask you the same question, as I believe you have a few notable updates you think are worth sharing related to service area businesses and name changes to Google business profiles?
Yeah, one service area business change that kind of happened very subtly, and we sort of started seeing it in the help forum, was that there are certain category restrictions that some service area businesses are not allowed to use anymore. And they basically disabled certain categories to certain service area businesses like auto repair, tire shop, Pilates studio. And Google, I think, did this because often these categories are thought of as like storefronts, right? If you hear the word shop or if you hear the word store, you think of going to a physical store or a physical location. You don't think of a service area business for these categories. And so that was kind of a subtle change. So when service area businesses were trying to choose these categories, they'd get an error message. And so Google has been making certain categories unavailable for service area businesses. So that's been kind of something that hasn't really been talked about a lot, I don't think, but it's more been a subtle change that some service area businesses are experiencing just because they're in specific categories. And so Google is recommending that they then choose, obviously, the next closest category, and that's not always the best match. So for instance, if you're a bakery, for instance, what's your next choice? There's really not a good choice. But again, when you think of a bakery, what do you think of? You think of a storefront that you can go in and buy muffins or cookies or cakes or whatever. You don't think of a home-based business for a bakery. So I think, that's one of the things that, impacts some service area businesses more than others. And then, along with the name change, I don't know why Google changed the name. That's something that only the branding people in the marketing department at Google are going to know. That's not something that I know. But I do know that, along with that, there are changes that we can most definitely expect to see rolling out next year. I mean, they basically said that in their release. We have known that the ability to edit your listing from search has been around for several months now. You can either enter your business name and edit it, or you can just enter, I think it's my business, and you can edit directly from search. So that's been around for a while, but the new things are you can actually verify your listing. And you can also fix issues like suspensions directly from search now. So we can expect to see, I think, way more changes coming down in, next year. I think there are going to be more integrations with other groups from Google. We're starting to see integrations of Google business messages, which is different than messages in Google business profiles. That's a chat feature. And so that's something that you can work with a third party partner like High Level and get that feature integrated into your Google business profile. So I think we're going to see more tools and integrations like that moving forward next year. So I think we're going to see lots of changes.
Yeah, I think it definitely needs some additional enhancements and investments. So it's good to see that's maybe the direction they're headed. And I think with the service area business, probably with COVID, there's just a lot more people trying to set up a service area business than in the past. So I'm sure that they're probably trying to set up more guardrails along those lines as well. But I'll throw the same question out. We've seen a lot of updates with Google, primarily specifically with their name going from Google My Business to Google Business Profile. That rebrand is definitely interesting. So I'll open up for the two gentlemen. What do you think was the intention of the rebrand as well, or any specific color that you wanted to add?
Yeah, so I personally haven't, I don't think I've put as much thought, speculation, whatever, into it as maybe some people have. So I'm not sure. I mean, for me personally, I've always thought that Google My Business, you could argue that maybe it's catchy from a branding perspective, but it just has a weird sort of like it doesn't roll off the tongue properly. It doesn't really make sense if you think about it. So I kind of wonder if that's part of it. But yeah, I haven't put a ton of thought into it. As far as the actual editing features within search that sort of was pushed out in the same announcement, I think that's huge. And I think one of the big problems that is trying to solve is the fact that the engagement rates within the dashboard historically, I think if you aggregate all the businesses who have claimed their profiles, is very low. And like one solution we've seen Google try to do about this is send those scary emails out to people who haven't logged into their dashboard or made any changes in 6 months or whatever, and say, like, warning, we're about to remove your profile from your dashboard. So I think this is just a way for them to go, like, how do we have the business owner engage more? And this way you don't even need to go into the dashboard, right? You can make changes. Eventually you'll be able to do everything you can do in the dashboard in search, I would assume. So I think that was probably the biggest motive there.
Yeah, I'll just tack onto that. I'm kind of in the same boat as Colin. I think that I don't see the rebrand as being all that important as in terms of the change of name. I mean, everybody cracks jokes about how hard it is to make the switch and how hard it is to say the new name. And I don't think it's all that important. I think the issue is more the shift to the editing right from the search results. And there's some language on the official communications from Google talking about how they're hoping to see all the small business owners interacting with their business profile right from search. So, you know, this idea that they're trying to push people in that direction, it leaves for me the concern what's going to happen to the traditional dashboard, or what they call now the business profile manager, because that's what I use on a regular basis, and I'm familiar with that for large numbers of business profiles. If you're working with an agency, it's a nice tool. I mean, I think that's probably what it was originally designed for. So as long as that tool sticks around, I'm going to be happy. I am kind of concerned that they're going to, you know, push towards using more API access and more search access, and this dashboard's going to get stuck in the middle. And Google has a great history of deprecating things that don't see a lot of use, and so I'd be concerned that the dashboard might disappear. Although there's no messaging about that yet either. It's just a personal concern of mine. But overall, it feels to me like it's more of just a push to get people to use the new interface more than it is an important change of branding.
Yeah, and I know, that was one question that I had too, is like, okay, the dashboard, I know even as like a single owner business, I would prefer to use the dashboard myself. And from what I understand, there's been lots of rumors about, is the dashboard disappearing? Is the dashboard disappearing? From what I understand, the plans right now isn't for the dashboard to disappear. The hope is that, these single business listings will just find it more convenient for them, because they probably have Google search open all day long anyway, to just manage their listings directly from search versus having to go to business.google.com and logging in that way. So, I agree with, Stefan. It's like, I'd rather manage from, the business manager profile as well, or the business profile manager as well. That, to me, that's easier to do. So I hope they don't get rid of that too.
Yeah, I think you all make a very good point, is that for a small business or a single business owner, they're probably typing in their listing quite often to look at it. And so if they're already looking at it, it's easy for them just to update it there. So I think that definitely makes sense. I'm sure there's some other things that are long-term plays. I definitely think with the trying to have more of an enterprise tool, maybe for larger brands, maybe potentially something that's premium or paid. So we're definitely curious to see what happens there, but I'm sure everybody else is too. So we'll keep moving on. So throughout the year, we've seen a multitude of listings and online presence updates. These updates are important as they help businesses better communicate and share information with their customers. In fact, businesses can now easily communicate with customers through their web browser and mobile app. This improvement allows businesses to see and respond to customer requests more easily and faster by typing on a full-size keyboard when responding to customer requests. Stefan, when and how should a business leverage this feature? Example, when they have enough staff on hand, or when they have enough staff on hand to be able to reply quickly to any incoming messages, service-based business, restaurants, etc. Another piece of information businesses should consistently monitor are their incoming reviews, Google began showing star ratings in their review snippets section of the knowledge panel in February. This is beneficial for brands with positive reviews. However, this can have a negative impact for businesses with a negative review. Stefan?
Well, I'll address the messaging thing for sure, because I see that actually as being somewhat connected to the rebrand that I was, my comment about that being that it's a shift towards doing everything in search or doing everything in that Google interface without moving off to Google My Business as a separate sort of service, or in the case of a mobile device, that it's an app on your mobile device. And I see that as a similar shift with what they're doing with messaging. It's now something that they're encouraging you to do in your browser, and they're bringing functionality to that browser-based messaging, including notifications and read receipts, which you would expect from sort of typical chat tools. So there definitely seems to me anyway to be a real push to having everybody interact with their business profile right from Google search, including the messaging element of it. One thing that I would caution, messaging is a little different. It's unique in that the expectation is that messaging tools will give you a quick response. If you look up any white papers by companies selling chat bots, they're going to talk about how their customers expect a quick response, 30 seconds, 60 seconds. It's different than email. As a customer, you might expect an email the same day or one business day, but chat, you expect a really rapid turnaround. And so, Google cautions if you don't respond within 24 hours, they might shut off the messaging feature on your business profile. You can turn it back on, but the point is that you need to respond quickly. So, I would say for now, you want to use the messaging tool in a way that works for your business. And maybe that is to have a PC, if you have a central kiosk and you have a bunch of staff moving past it who are all, you've given them access and permission to respond to messages on behalf of the business, then having that one central location, a web browser on a desktop PC, might be a great way for your business to interact with people quickly, which is what the expectation is. But maybe you have a bunch of techs out in the field and you expect them to respond because the questions are technical in nature, or have to do with when are you showing up, sort of thing, scheduling things. So you might be better off having a distributed response, or a distributed setup where multiple people are responding with the app for now, maybe in a browser going forward when the app gets discontinued next year. So I would say just work to make messages function for your business. And I'll throw in one tip, and that is messaging has been really buggy historically. And I would just urge any business that's going to set it up to test it. It's easy enough to do, just somebody on staff, a friend, a family member certainly has a device logged into a Google account and they can send you a message. And I would test it, and I would test it regularly. I've heard stories of messages not showing up. The unread counts are sort of unreliable. Agencies have a problem responding to messages if they have too many business profiles in their business profile manager. So it can be an effective tool. The expectation is that you respond quickly, but just make sure that it's working for your business. And I would test it periodically, because Google is rolling out changes, and changes tend to introduce bugs. So that's my big tip there, is use it if it works, but test it regularly.
Sure.
I'll just add on to the response time thing, because I noticed something the other day, which I think will become more normal. It is Google displaying response times and like stacking up response times amongst different businesses. So if anyone's noticed before, for certain categories, if you enable the messaging feature, sometimes you'll get that request a quote call to action that's kind of connected. And once you fill in that quote form, Google will then display usually 3 competitors to that business that you just requested a quote from. And I noticed yesterday, it said the average response times next to each of those competitors. And one of them, it said, it was like usually responds within 24 hours. One of them said usually responds within an hour. And I'm just thinking, if you were basing, you're looking through reviews, you're looking through photos, whatever it is, to try and decide this business over that business, I think that's going to make a huge difference if one guy responds in an hour typically and the other guy's 24 hours. So you definitely want to be on top of that if you're deciding to use that feature.
That's a great point, Colin, and I'm still really not very happy that they make that option. I mean, they used to just show the 3 competitors. Now they actually like pre-populate the check boxes for the customer to send the additional quote to the competitors. But the other thing I think people need to be aware of too is that if you grant access to your employees, the messages look like they're coming from their personal Gmail account, not from the business itself. And that's something that I really wish Google would change, because it just, I think, looks odd to have that message come from an individual versus from the brand itself. So that's something that I wish Google would change.
I'd like to throw in one more thing. I don't want to backpedal too far, but I want to tack on something to what Colin said, because I think it's really important. You know, the response time is really an issue with messaging. And Google calculates it a sort of a rolling average. And if you get a spam message and you ignore it, that's really going to hurt your response time calculation. You can report it as spam. You should report it as spam. When you report it as spam, it's not factored into that response time calculation. But an ignored spam message is going to hurt your score there, or the timing there. So if it, as Colin says, if they're showing it in the search results and it's comparing you with your competitors, you want to make sure you have a quick turnaround. So mark your spam messages.
That's a good tip.
Well, we're kind of mentioning bugs a little bit. I'm looking at the questions in the chat, and I think might be a good moment to bring one of them up. Somebody said, to our operation, it has been the edit in search update, but that's because it has caused a lasting bug where about 90% of the profiles we manage have a bug and display a constant. There are updates for this profile message that is incorrect because they repurpose that system to send out the "you can now edit in search" announcement. I know, being on the boards, there's definitely a lot of people that are having issues with edits and whatnot. Curious to hear from the panel their thoughts on that.
I haven't heard of that issue or that bug. I don't know if any of you guys have.
I haven't either, but I would say if there is a bug, and bugs happen all the time with Google My Business, report it in the community forum. If there's enough complaining or a significant number of reports about a particular bug, you can get Google to look into it. So it's, you know, there are one-off fringe cases, and support can sometimes help you with those. But if it's something like this that's maybe programmatic, that they just overlooked and that they need to fix, a good way to make noise and get Google to take notice is to report it in the community forum.
I think this might also be a good time to bring up, speaking of bugs, for anybody that doesn't know, and to put some of these things into context in terms of how Google deals with them. There is a bug that's been going since the beginning of this year where you log into your profile and it says it's 80% complete. And of course, as a business owner or a marketer, you want to get that to 100 because it feels like the right thing to do, and Google's telling you should do this. But there's been a bug since, I think, January of this year that prevents you from getting to 100%. There's no way to do it. And so we're almost into December. So this is like a 12-month bug. So just know that sometimes these things that you think should be or could be fixed quickly and easily just take a long time, and it could be a prioritization issue, or it could just be a super hard technical thing for Google to fix. But so that's just a good example, a weird little bug that's been going on for 12 months.
Yep. Yeah, and that actually has to do with uploading your cover image and your logo, just to make that clear.
Perfect. So we'll circle back to reviews. Another piece of information businesses should consistently monitor are incoming reviews. Google began showing star ratings in the review snippet sections of the Knowledge panel in February. This is beneficial for brands with positive reviews. However, it can be negative impact for business with negative reviews. Colin, how does Google determine which reviews to surface in review snippets? Do you have any advice for brands with negative reviews that may be working on their reputation management strategy?
Yeah. So the interesting thing about those review snippets is, so like on discovery searches, so like a non-branded search, the snippets actually seem to be query dependent, right? So for instance, if you search for best dental hygienist near me on Google Maps and you select one of the profiles that shows up, you'll kind of see that all the review snippets are all ones that mention like the hygienist or best this, best that. So from a discovery perspective, just know that it's kind of like query dependent. For branded searches, so when they show up in the knowledge panel, that's definitely not as clear to me as far as why they choose those three that show up there. We're doing some testing around this at Sterling Sky that, of course, we'll kind of share if we figure anything out, but I'm not sure what the rhyme or reason is at this point. And as far as having negative reviews, definitely is a bigger problem now that the stars show compared to when the stars didn't show. And typically the process we go through is if there's a negative review in the knowledge panel, like we're going to check the review content itself, see if it violates Google's terms of service. If it clearly does, that's easy. You flag it. Hopefully Google gets rid of it, which will then remove it from the snippet. If it doesn't, we always take it one step further and we kind of review the history of the actual profile of the person that left the review. And I believe it was the beginning of last year, 2020, Google Maps launched that feature where you can like report individual profiles. So that potentially could be a way to have that snippet taken down, is if you actually kind of figure out that the person who left the review is sort of like this spammy reviewer profile. So always kind of do those two steps. It's like a first step if you see negative reviews and the review snippets in the knowledge panel.
Thanks. Google My Business recently launched its review removal request tool in mid-March to help businesses track GMB reviews they're asking to have removed from their profile. Sherry, why and when should a business request a removal of a review?
So basically, people would want to request a removal if that review violates Google's guidelines with regard to user-generated content. If you don't like the review or the review is just a bad review, that's not going to be a reason that Google's going to remove that review from your knowledge panel, right? So I would say in the majority of cases, Google will not remove a review just because you ask them to remove it. The review literally has to violate a guideline. But the review removal tool is nice if you have, X number of accounts under your control. So if you have a whole bunch of accounts, I'm not sure exactly what the number is, Colin or Stefan, you can go ahead and jump in. Like one of my accounts has 12 accounts in it and I can use the tool. But if you have a whole bunch of accounts or manage a bunch of listings, then you're not able to use this tool. But the removal tool is very nice because what you can do is go to the URL. I have the URL, I can always give it to you, but you can go in, see all of your listings in there, check the listing that you want to remove the review. It pulls up the reviews that you have in your profile, and you can select which review you want Google to look at. And then you'll also be given the option to explain to Google why that review should be removed. So you can tell them what guideline it breaks or whatever. And it also will allow you to kind of track the progress of that. You'll get an email as well, typically within about 3 or 4 days. So it's just a nice feature to be able to, submit review removal requests that way versus going into your dashboard, going to the review, clicking the 3 dots, and then flagging that review as inappropriate. So it's just kind of a handy way for business owners or agencies to go in and flag those reviews from one area versus going in individually and flagging it that way. But we find in a lot of cases Google just won't remove reviews because they don't want to get in the middle of things, and they don't know honestly who's telling the truth and who's not. And literally, unless the reviewer is breaking a guideline or they find that it's a review spam case where a bunch of people are leaving bad reviews all at one time, or there's something that you can tangibly say this is legitimately not a review that belongs here, they generally aren't going to remove it because they don't like to get in the middle of those types of things.
Yeah, and Sherry, to your question, we tried it with an account that had 33 listings, and it gave us this message that said, based on the number of business profiles you manage, this process is not available. So, I mean, obviously agency accounts, like you'll have too many listings to qualify to use this. So 33, I mean, it's got to be less than 33.
So
know
it's
that.
between 12 and 33 then.
So
Yeah.
it might have changed recently because I tested it with an account with about 20 business profiles in it, and it wasn't working until about 2 weeks ago.
Okay,
So Colin, you
Interesting.
might want to check out. It might have changed in the last couple of weeks.
Cool.
awesome. Thanks, guys.
And we'll take one other question from the chat. They were asking, do you know why Google will pull in Google reviews versus first-party reviews of that business?
I don't know if I understand the question. Colin, you can answer if you understand it.
Yeah, I don't know the reason, and I assume just referring to, like, if you're looking at a business's knowledge panel and it's pulling in those review snippets, why are they Google reviews versus reviews from your website or something like that? I mean, I think Google just wants to display native Google information in the knowledge panel. I have seen cases where in the reviews from the web section, they'll pull in different sites that are kind of ranking and using schema. And I have seen the business's own websites get pulled into the reviews from the web section before. But as far as the actual review snippets, I think it's just a matter of Google wanting to display Google data.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the only industry that I've seen where they're pulling in other reviews is for hotels. You'll see that they're showing some of the other platforms directly within the listing, but I haven't seen that on any of the other listings for anything.
I'll just mirror what Colin said because I've seen it as well in the mold removal industry. A big American franchise, they had a page set up where they had some clever schema put into place, and then that was showing up in the review profile of their franchisees.
Excellent. All right, well, let's explore more of the vertical specific updates that took place this year. The hotel industry was one of the industries that was definitely most impacted by the pandemic. However, Google prioritized adding new features and functionality specifically for this industry. Sherry, can you touch on some of these?
Yeah, the hotel industry was really hit hard. I would say hotels and restaurants were probably, and airlines, anything related to travel and restaurants, I think were probably the biggest industries that were hit hard. And luckily, I mean, I think Google responded pretty quickly to make, different attributes and different features available. So for instance, hotels, if they were closed, they could put temporarily closed as an option, or if they, went permanently out of business, that was an option as well. The other thing that they did is they made COVID specific attributes available to hotels that are not available to anybody else. Like, how are they cleaning? They have enhanced cleaning, they have personal protection, physical distancing. There's a whole bunch of attributes that are not available to other categories, especially like increased food safety and minimized contact. Because I don't know if anybody stayed in a hotel lately, but staying in a hotel now is completely different than it was a year and a half ago. And so it's a totally different, totally different. And so also, if you have a restaurant within a hotel, you can also, mark that differently as well and make changes to that. Now, hotels are a little bit different because a lot of the features in the knowledge panel for a hotel are based on hotel ads. And so those types of changes and features are directly kind of modified from the ads feature. So for instance, typically hotels aren't allowed to change their hours because hotels are typically open 24/7. So people can check in, any time of the day. But, for COVID, they're now allowing hotels to change their hours of operation if they want to. And that's something that's kind of new because, like I said, typically hotels are one of those categories where they can't set hours because they should be open 24/7. So people can go into the hotel at any time of day. So that's kind of another change as well that, they're allowing the flexibility if for some reason a hotel does have, weird hours due to COVID. And so you can keep customers updated through the ads feature as well. So those are just some ideas that Google came up with to hopefully help the hotel industry during these kind of weird times.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, every business is operating a little bit differently. So I think that's one of the things everybody's trying to understand is how to represent my business best online. Colin, GNB launched the ability to manage health provider attributes and insurance network information. What features and functionality should healthcare providers prioritize leveraging on their GMB listings? What is most important for the healthcare industry?
Yeah. So in addition to the like the virtual care and the COVID-19 related fields that were launched in 2020, Google search also began displaying insurance information and knowledge panels, which I think is a big one. And so that started in 2020 as well. And it was this feature that was displayed on both search and maps. And it would kind of show just below the phone number on certain listings. And it was just a link that says check insurance info. And then fast forward in early 2021, users were actually starting to see the ability to like manually add insurance providers inside the GBP dashboard. So like up until that point, it just seemed that Google was scraping the information from other third-party sites and just associating it with the GMB. And then as of early this year, you can actually go into your dashboard and select insurance providers that you take. But it definitely seems to be far from being fully rolled out. I was actually working with my colleague, Elizabeth, a couple weeks ago, and she's in the US. I'm in Canada. We were both kind of working on the same client, and she could see all this like wonderful insurance information under the info tab in the dashboard. And I couldn't see it. And like to this day, it's completely invisible. So that is huge. You know, I'm thinking back to a situation 3-4 years ago working with a dental office, and they had this really annoying problem where they would get so many inquiries from potential patients who didn't have the types of insurance that they actually accept there. So like this would have been an incredible feature for them to be able to let people know, like, here's the types of insurance that we accept front and center within our knowledge panel. The other really cool thing about this feature is if you see it in a knowledge panel, so it'll say check insurance info, click that link, it opens up this little pop-up that lists all the insurance providers that business accepts. And at the very top of the page, there's another like click to call phone number link. So it's like this other wonderful call to action that somebody could potentially use to contact the business. And then of course, it's going to help like attract patients that actually use the types of insurance that you accept as a business. So I think that's huge. Big feature still being rolled out. So yeah, that's a big one.
Excellent. Yeah, always the more information they can put in front of the customer, the easier it is for them to make a decision. So appreciate that. Food ordering on Google has increased more than 230% since last year. To help handle the demand, Order with Google lets food businesses accept orders for takeout and delivery directly through their Google business profile on search and maps. With restaurants being another vertical that was heavily affected by the pandemic, Sherry, what GMB tips do you have for restaurant brands trying to recover from 2 difficult years?
Yeah, first of all, I would say that they need to make sure that they are always on their Google business profiles and make sure that their information is current and updated based on what's going on at their restaurant. First of all, Google released during COVID the dine-in, takeout, and delivery attributes. And so making sure that they're updated and current based on your situation. So obviously during COVID, most people were only doing takeout or delivery or just delivery. So making sure that you have those attributes, the correct ones turned on, is going to be really, really important. And then also they have the COVID attributes as well. So customers want to know, are masks required? And then are employees wearing masks? Are temperature checks required? Do you sanitize the areas in between customers? All that kind of information is important for the customers to know. So make sure you go through the attributes and check the attributes. And I will tell you, it's always interesting, and I'm sure Colin and Stefan are also the same way. I always go in and check attributes every once in a while. And it's amazing how sometimes new attributes just show up and you're like, when the heck did that one come up, for this particular category? Because they'll just appear. And so I think some people don't realize that they do need to check those attributes frequently because new ones will show up. And so you want to make sure to check the attributes in your listing to make sure that you have the right ones selected. Like Stefan said, the Latino owned was a new one that they did, I think, during Latino month. And so you want to make sure that you're checking those, letting know people if the staff wears masks and those types of things. And then accepting orders online, I think, is really important. And it's really important, I think, to make sure that business owners know that, third parties can connect to their listings. And they also need to know how to get those third party tools off if they don't want them connected, because that we hear a lot in the help forum as well. And so you can connect with third party tools like DoorDash and the other delivery services. And there are ways that you can disconnect from them as well. So it's just really important that the restaurants know that they can partner with these third-party tools if they want to use them instead of having their own delivery services within the store. But then they also need to know that they can, work to get them disconnected if they don't want to use DoorDash or one of those other services as well.
Yeah, I think that's one of the number one questions I get from restaurants is how do I get that off of my listing?
Mm-hmm.
I just want to second the attribute thing because I think that is really important. And I do the exact same thing, Sherry. Will almost on whether it's a monthly or a quarterly basis, going through and seeing if new attributes have been added or taken away. And another one that would be really valuable for any business, but certainly restaurants, probably hotels too, is there's also those what I kind of think of as like consumer facing attributes. So if you're in the knowledge panel for the business, there's a little link that shows up that says like, know this place, ? If you click on that, it'll open up a little panel and Google will start asking you questions related to that business. And it'll often be about like either COVID related stuff, or if it's a restaurant, do they have this? Is it expensive? So if you can go through that on a regular basis as a business owner, you're just increasing the chances that Google has confidence that you do this certain thing or carry this certain product or whatever it may be. So there's those like two types of or two areas where you can look through attributes.
Yeah, and that's a great tip, Colin, because there's actually one question I got when I was going through it. They actually asked which keyword better describes this business, and I thought that was a really interesting question.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if you can use that, or if you can have your, have your friends or family go through those questions, that's one of those areas where Google wants information from its customers and its searchers about businesses, because they know businesses are going to be biased with the information they provide. So, they want to get that type of feedback from users. So no, that's a great point, Colin. Thanks.
I'll tack on one more little tip just about attributes, because I think they're maybe a little underappreciated, but attributes are a three-way toggle. So by default, it's sort of a null value. And if you click it once, you put a check mark on it and you say, yes, we have this attribute. You check it again and it's a no value. And it's the third click that takes you back to that null state. So it's just important to know that when you see it by default, it's not indicating that you don't have that attribute. It's in a null state. You can indicate no by clicking it twice. So remember, it's a three-way toggle. There might be cases where that's valuable for your business.
This is why you are the technical guys.
Yeah, maybe.
All right, I'm going to pass it back to you, Stefan. Which insights should be businesses paying most attention to measure their KPIs? Has this shifted at all since before the pandemic?
I look at Google business listings. I know there's this discussion about Google business listings being your new homepage. Google is your new homepage. And it definitely is an interesting concept. And it's definitely true to some extent, but I also, in my mind, see it largely as being sort of a lead generating part of the marketing equation. And so ultimately, when it comes to looking at leads, you want communications from customers for a lot of small businesses. So you're looking at things like phone calls, messages, driving directions, that sort of thing. And the metrics, as much as there's been a shift from the insights to the GMB or Google Business Profile insights to the performance metrics, they're still measuring those same values. And I think that's pretty telling. You know, there's this whole new interface, so everything's got a bit of a polish on it. There's a little more granularity because now you can select a date range with a little more accuracy than you could with Insights, but it's still largely the same measures. I think their bookings are new in the new performance metrics. But I think that says a lot that here's the new tool, it's different, it's better, but really it's the same measures. And so I think those things haven't changed for businesses, regardless of the state of the pandemic. You know, if you're hoping to get leads, those leads come in through messaging, calls, and so on. But I will throw in one little detail about the new performance metrics that they give you. The reporting is different. Maybe not that clear in the documentation. Insights measures views of your business profile, and the performance metrics measure users. And so the way that is important is if you think of somebody who's searching for something and they conduct a search and your business profile shows up, it gets viewed. And then they're not quite sure, so they tweak their search and they repeat it and they tweak it again. They do a couple of searches and your profile is shown a couple of times. Now you've just gotten a couple of views. Those views are from one person who could potentially become one customer. And so having a views count is not all that valuable compared to a user count. And that's where the new performance metrics win out, in that they're a little more accurate in what they represent. But they're still looking at those same KPIs, which I think are what you would expect to be measuring from a business profile. Again, those leads.
Thank you. All right, so we're coming to the end of time, so definitely want to just ask one last question to the panel, and anybody can answer this, or everybody. Curious if you have any Google business profile predictions for 2022 that you'd like to share.
I guess for me, I would expect to see lots of changes next year and feature enhancements. But like I said, I think what we would probably see is, I think, other groups within Google adding features that will be worked within Google business profiles. I think that's my prediction, is that we'll see other groups that are going to be allowing features to be added to knowledge panels.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I'll probably say, I think I said the same thing when this question came up last year, but I think just the trend of Google modifying and sort of reshaping, reimagining some of their guidelines to just allow more modern types of business models fit within the system. You know, I think there's certain core parts of the guidelines that'll always probably be in place, but you know, when you think about things like you know, virtual offices, just as an example, and obviously I'm not saying that, you know, Google should open up the rules to allow businesses to set up at virtual offices, but acknowledging the fact that there are different real world, modern, really brilliant ways that businesses are conducting business, and they need to be somewhat flexible to that. So I think they'll continue to adapt how they allow certain types of businesses to use the product. Yeah, so that would be one for sure.
Yeah, like ghost kitchens, right?
Like ghost kitchens, yeah.
So I'll just say, I think if anything, the last 18 months or so, we've seen the rate of change in Google My Business ramp up. We've probably seen more changes in the last 18 months than we saw in the 36 months before. And I've heard a lot of people cynically say, hey, look, Google can work quickly when they need to work quickly. So it's just, to me, it opens the question about what the rate of change will look like for the next 12 months or so. Are we going to see this rapid change like we've been seeing? Or are we going to maybe get back to what we saw previously? The change makes things tricky. I mean, it definitely opens a lot of opportunities for small businesses, but it also makes things hard. I mean, there's a lot to stay on top of with Google My Business or Google Business Profiles. So it's something to watch because it's changing so fast.
Excellent. Really appreciate everybody's insights. So we'll just share the poll results real quick and then we'll wrap up. So the question again was, what Google update impacted you most this year? With 15 responses, 28% page experience update. And then 23% with 12 responses, new attributes made available to some. I know we definitely talked in depth about the attributes. So definitely in line with kind of what we were speaking with. And then appreciate everybody's time. And just to wrap everything up, we've covered a lot of ground, and we hope our panelists have helped you refine your marketing strategy given the influx of updates that have taken place this year. If there are any questions that we weren't able to get to, we will make sure to follow up afterwards. And we did see there was quite a few questions, so we appreciate that. We'd also be happy to answer any questions that you didn't have a chance to ask, and you can just shoot us an email at marketing@rioseo.com. I'd like to thank everyone for joining today's discussion, and a special thank you to our awesome panelists, Colin, Sherry, and Stefan, for taking the time to be with us today. We'll be sending out a recording and a copy of our top GMB takeaways of 2021 ebook, where we dive deeper into each of these updates. Thank you. It was a pleasure to moderate today's discussion. We hope that these types of local search discussions every month provide value, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.